Hey, it's Sunday morning, and if you're more excited about the baseball games than the football games, then do I have a show for you.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you don't believe me, how could I have a lower third where I was called Sully if that was not the case? Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, and this episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, more like Booking. Yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even for your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball, and get the Booking.com app today. Hey, let's go through the trivia question, which a grand total of 0 people got right. A couple of people made some nice guesses. The question was, which pitcher has the most career wins in the history of the Milwaukee Brewers? I got a few Teddy Higueras thrown in there. I got a few, let's see, someone put in, someone said Bill Wegman. I thought that was an interesting guess. A couple people said Giovanni Gallardo. Not the case. The answer is Jim Slayton. That's right. Jim Slayton, with 117 wins, has the most career victories in the history of the Milwaukee Brewers. Mike Caldwell is right behind him with 102. Those are the only two people who've won 100 games for the Brewers franchise. Teddy Higueras, Musas, Giovanni Gallardo are along the way there. Jim Slayton, if you don't know, was an all-star pitcher for the Brewers who pitched from the early 70s through 77, basically, and then came back after a quick cameo with the Detroit Tigers, came right back to Milwaukee where he belonged, and wound up pitching in the World Series in 1982, and he finished his career bouncing between California and Detroit. So there you go. By the way, I believe a lot of weird things. I believe that we should have stats. We should have city stats. And let me tell you what I mean by that. If you win a game for a franchise and that franchise moves and another franchise shows up where the moved franchise was, well, then I think the stats that were played in the city should stay in the city. Warren Spahn has won more games than any pitcher in Milwaukee baseball history. Between 1953 and 1964, he won 20 games. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, count it, 9 times. 9 times. So that's 180 wins right there. So when you talk about who is the most wins in Milwaukee history, it should be Warren Spahn. Just like if you're going to be talking about who's won the most games in Washington history, you shouldn't be looking at, combining the stats of the Expos and the Washington Nationals. You should say it's Walter Johnson with 417, all with the Washington Senators. And I think that you should have Christy Mathewson's stats should be in New York. And I don't know, maybe I'm just strange that way. But the fact that Walter Johnson's 417 victories are somehow credited in Minnesota because that's where that franchise moved to. He didn't pitch a single game in Minnesota. He won all those for Washington. I digress. The fact that I see Jim Slayton with 100 and some odd wins for the Brewers, and that's being looked at as the greatest in Brewers history, but it's not the best in Milwaukee history. I guess I got to phrase it that way. Let's stop talking about the past. Let's pull up Mark McGwire and say, I'm not here to talk about the past. Let's talk about the now. Games are about to start in a couple of hours, so hopefully some of you are going to catch this podcast before the games start. If not, there's going to be a nice little look back at how we thought the games were going to go. The team that is the key for making Sunday really cool is, believe it or not, the Boston Red Sox. Let me explain. I understand that the Red Sox are no longer contending. I understand that as I'm recording this, the Red Sox can only afford to lose 2 more games. They have 8 games left. They have to go 6-2 to finish above 500. And I have a feeling they're not going to. But they blew a big chance on Friday to make this a really wild weekend when they just could not get a runner in from third base with less than 2 outs. Because if they did in extra innings, they would have beaten Minnesota. Now, the rain showed up yesterday and washed out the game against the Red Sox and the Twins, which means today they are going to be playing a doubleheader in Fenway. The key for the Red Sox, well, they have to sweep that if they want any hope to get 500, but that's not the point. The point is defeating Minnesota. It's funny, I just mentioned Minnesota by bringing up Walter Johnson. Do I have anything against the Twins? No, I do not. Do I have anything against the fans of Minnesota? Of course I don't. Do I hate the Twins? Hell, I'm the father of twins. How can I help the Twins? But in terms of my love of anarchy in the final week of baseball, it is imperative for the Red Sox to show up against Minnesota. They're going to be playing a game in just a couple hours with Nick Pivetta against Pablo Lopez. That's a hell of a pitching matchup. Lopez is a very good pitcher, but Pivetta, when he's on his game, is pretty darn good. Cutter Crawford is throwing the nightcap against Matthews. Crawford is anyone's guess. He can sometimes be terrific, he can be not. Why am I obsessing over this? Because right now, as I'm recording this, the Detroit Tigers are a mere half game out of a wild card spot. That's right. A team that was floundering for a big chunk of the season, that people assumed they were going to trade away Skubal, a team that, as I'm recording this, is in 4th place, but has gone on an absolute rampage. This was a team that was, on the 4th of July, 9 games under 500. 9 games under 500. And after a really brutal stretch at the end of July and beginning of August, where everything was falling apart for them, actually, basically through mid-August, they could not put 2 and 2 together, and they went on a couple of big losing streaks. By August 10th, they were still they were still 8 games under 500 on August 10th. 8 games under. And since then, they're 26-11. 26-11. And the game they won yesterday against Baltimore had one of the best Houdini acts I've seen in a long time. And in this game, the Tigers had a 2-run lead going into the bottom of the 9th inning. And Jason Foley, who's normally pretty reliable in that 9th inning, did not have it. He did not have it. And he let up hits. Yeah, he let 2 straight hits, a walk, and then a Gunnar Henderson double. So there was runners on 2nd and 3rd, nobody out. The winning run was at 3rd. And a winning run was at 3rd. Fly ball, grounder, all sorts of things to get him to bring in that run. And in came Bo Brisky. And Bo Brisky got out Cedric Mullins, Anthony Santander, and Colton Cowser 1, 2, 3, and did not allow that run to score. And then Detroit rallied in the 10th with a stupid Manfred man, but then they put on another run and they wound up winning the game. And with that, the Tigers are half a game out. But stop the freaking presses. The Seattle Mariners, left for dead, with one of the most humiliating seasons I can remember, maybe ever, when you consider they had a 10-game lead. They had a 10 freaking game lead. And I'm not talking, and that 10-game lead was in June, mid-June. And they fell all the way to 5 games out, 6 games out. And they're still 5 games out, but they've been winning recently. And they've been winning games, and all of a sudden they're a game and a half out. And thanks to Julio Rodriguez's 2 home runs, they did quite well. Thank you very much. They're playing Texas today. Now, which brings us back to the Red Sox. If the Red Sox can find a way to win those 2 games against the Minnesota Twins, and the Tigers win, and Seattle wins, then you would have, first of all, the Tigers would be in the wild card spot by themselves, and Minnesota and Seattle would be tied a game out. We would be going into the final week of the season with 3 teams within 1 game. That's what I want. Total anarchy. And it all relies on an underachieving Red Sox team who has removed Rafael Devers from their lineup because he's out for the year now. But can they do it? It's just 2 games. Today's episode of Locked On MLB is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, more like Booking.yeah. Explore cities all around the United States, especially as a baseball fan. Check out their stadium. Check out the cuisine. And with Booking.com's wide variety of choice across the U.S., you can go incognito to your rival city. Do you know what? I used Booking.com this summer. I went on a fabulous baseball trip. First, I went into Buffalo, and I checked out the Bisons when I was there. And by the way, Buffalo, beautiful city. Then over to Syracuse, where I saw the Syracuse Mets, stayed in a nice, safe hotel there. Then on my way to Cooperstown, where I stayed in a hotel right on the lake, but was still walking distance to the Baseball Hall of Fame. And I did all of it through Booking.com. Booking.com delivers exactly the right stay for you in this country. And Booking.com can help you book a stay that's so close to where you want to be. No matter what team you're rooting for this postseason, Booking.com can make you a fan of any U.S. city. From hotels that look over stadiums to that fabulous place I stayed in Cooperstown, Booking.com has so many choices. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com. Yeah, Booking.yeah. Hey, let's hear from our friends over at FanDuel. You can start your season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you play your first $5 bet. Go to America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com. You know, right now, the Houston Astros, they won again. Ronel Blanco pitched well again. And in some ways, they are a very scary team when you take a look at the postseason because, well, quite frankly, they don't have a lot of holes right now. They don't have a lot of holes. You know, you're seeing that they're starting to get some production from Jeremy Pena. You know, Jordan Alvarez is having an MVP caliber season if it wasn't for Aaron Judge. And the rotation of sorry, as I scratch my nose. And the fact that Yusei Kikuchi has fit in perfectly, you have a starting 5 of Valdez, Kikuchi, Blanco, Brown, and Arrighetti. There, as I said earlier, there's no room for Verlander here. Verlander is either going to be a long reliever or not on the freaking roster. But, by the way, if you're an Astros fan, this is quite a day for birthdays because it's the birthday for both Jeremy Pena and Carlos Correa. That's kind of wild that you have two World Series champion shortstops of the exact same birthday. Anyway, I digress. But I really think right now, the two scariest teams to win to be there for the American League pennant are the two teams that are really gelling and seem to be, for the lack of a better word, solving their problems internally and having some of the moves they made work. A lot of people trashed the Yankees. They had a horrible middle third of the season. There's no getting around it. They did. They had a horrible middle third, but they had a fantastic start. And let's face it, they're having a pretty decent finish. Aaron Judge and company are in Oakland saying goodbye to the Oakland Coliseum. Judge homered again. He's up to 54. I think he's a cinch to get 60, and he is going to, well, he's going to run away with the American League MVP. And by the way, the Judge and Shohei Ohtani are the two biggest stars in baseball right now. And the one stat that Ohtani really has over Judge at this point is stolen bases. Now, Ohtani is the MVP in the National League. If you say otherwise, then you must be part of the Francisco Lindor family. But let's not sleep on the amazing year Judge is having. You know, that it's different than the season that Ohtani is having, but across the board, you know, home runs, RBI, average, OPS, slugging, OPS plus, if whatever advanced or traditional stat you have, at this point, Ohtani only has him beat in the stolen base department. Now, and Judge plays the field. Okay, yes, but remember, this is a rehab season for Shohei Ohtani. So that's that also kind of puts a bone into something. But the other factors with the team, I'm always reluctant to give Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone credit, but give them credit. They didn't panic. And the move of bringing in Jazz Chisholm, I think, has been a fantastic move. And a couple of things that, like, he's been a good situation on the team. We're going to see what Jason Dominguez can do. He's got some big hits so far, and he's only played in a handful of games. But I would rather have Dominguez out there than Verdugo, quite frankly. Volpe is playing terrific defense and is tightening up there. Bringing Rizzo back, just having him back in the lineup is a positive thing. Same with Stanton. Whether or not they put up their all-star stats isn't the point. The fact that they're in the lineup there just makes the entire lineup feel different than the split squad spring training lineup that they had in the midpoint of the season that completely relied on Judge and Soto. But the best thing they did, first of all, let's face it, the Yankees, now that Heel is pitching well again, Rodon looked terrific. Cortez has pitched pretty well as of late. And, Cole he had the rough game in Boston, but he turned it around with 9 great innings in Oakland the other day. Clark Schmidt's done well. They have a very deep starting staff. And there's the addition by subtraction. Removing Clay Holmes from the closer role has been a godsend. Now, Luke Weaver has come in and done a good job as the closer, but I think the best thing the Yankees have done in terms of the closer situation is it looks like they are not adhering to the tyranny of the save. And I know this is sacrilege to say this, but there's pitching their bullpen sometimes with a mentality of, well, we don't have a great closer, so let's use the best pitcher for this particular situation. Now, Weaver may wind up getting the majority of the saves, but if Stroman is in there pitching well, they keep him in. When Nestor Cortez was pitching great in a tight game in Chicago and no one could get a hit off of him, leave him in. In other words, don't always just think, well, we have to hand the ball to this guy to pile up the saves. No, you don't. Take a page out of the 2005 White Sox, who mixed and matched. And yes, Bobby Jenks got the lion's share of the saves, but not all of them. Use the best pitchers that are available. The Astros did that when they won the World Series in 2017. And that's on the pitching side. I know they're ba-ba-bang, ba-ba-bang, ba-ba-bang. but they got a bunch of different guys getting saves that year. And by the way, so did the Dodgers when they won the COVID series, when they decided, hey, maybe we should use Kenley Jansen for every save situation. That's going to be the topic, by the way, of a podcast later this week, where I want to once and for all put the kibosh on whether or not Kenley Jansen and Craig Kimbrell belong in the Hall of Fame. Spoiler alert, they don't. But the Yankees are turning themselves into a really strong pennant contender at the right time. And another, by the way, probably in that same podcast, I'm going to be talking about later this week about the tortured fan bases that really need a championship. And believe it or not, New York fans are one of them. And I'm going to go that you may think that's complete nonsense until I completely break it down and you'll find out I'm right. There's one other team that's been tortured that is really looking like a potential pennant winner. And if they wind up facing the Yankees in the ALCS, I think it'll be a barn burner. All right, you know all about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as few as 4 correct picks. And PrizePicks is the best way to get in on the action, as it's available in most states, including Texas, Georgia, and right here in California. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. And when my picks hit, I can get my money as quick as 15 minutes. And PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You could double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks. They get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, the other team I think you probably could figure out that I think is going to be, I don't know, if everything is really clicking right now, are the, say it with me, the American League Central champion Cleveland Guardians. Now, Detroit is playing tremendous baseball, and who knows what will happen if they or Seattle sneak in. At anyone's guess for the Twins, and the Royals have picked a terrible time to go on a 6-game losing streak. By the way, if they make it 7 games today, they may not make the playoffs. It may be complete anarchy. You may have the last 2 American League wildcard spots that are in jeopardy. But that just meant that the Guardians, I almost said Indians, are a 90-win team, and everything seems to be working for them right now. You know, Ramirez, you cross your fingers he's got to be healthy. But the fact they don't have Quan, and the fact that they're leaning on the Jackenzie Noels and the Kyle Manzardos of the world, well, guess what? It's been working. And yes, they're filled with injuries, and Logan Allen and Tristan McKenzie are probably not going to be factors there. But for whatever reason, everything they're touching right now is they just are running by the Kansas City Royals of 2015, their whole mentality of just give this bullpen the lead. Doesn't matter who gets it. Doesn't matter how they get it. Just put it right there. And quite frankly, I would be horrified to play this team in a short series. You got 3 legit pennant contenders in the American League. The Cleveland, Houston, and New York. Of the 3 of them, on paper, I would say the Yankees. Absolutely on paper, I'd say the Yankees. But the reason for star power, I would say the Astros, especially in terms of the rotation. But when you look at bullpens and you look at how a great bullpen can absolutely drive you right to the championship. And I'm thinking not just of the Royals. I'm thinking about what happened with Atlanta when they won the World Series in 2021. And there was at least 3 better teams than them in the National League. The bullpen of Cleveland is the X factor. You hand that bullpen the lead, they are going to hold on to it. It's essentially a 5-inning game you're going to play. Atlanta won the World Series doing that in 2021, and they did not have any of the depth that this Cleveland team has. So basically, the American League could have 3 bits of anarchy. Kansas City, Minnesota, Detroit, and Seattle. At this point, they all could get in, and everyone I mentioned could get out. Now, Kansas City will have to continue their slide, but you know what? It's possible, especially when you consider this. Kansas City was a 100-loss team last year, and they've clinched a winning record. They've already done a 20-game swing. If you had told any Kansas City fan on the planet Earth that their team was going to have 82 wins this year, their jaws would have dropped like that skeleton in Coco. However, when you consider that they were they were tied for first place in the American League Central just a couple of weeks ago, and they have just been Wile E. Coyoteing it right now. It makes the bottom of the AL wild card interesting. Baltimore is anyone's guess. Baltimore just doesn't look very good right now, but they have tons of talent. So who knows? They may turn the aft thrusters on. But when you look at New York, Cleveland, and Houston, those are 3 legitimate pennant contenders. And any one of those 3 teams, it wouldn't stun me to have them get in. But boy, oh boy, it's that bullpen at Cleveland that would scare me the most. So we're going to see. Let's just get to it, see how the games unfold. By the way, it's going to bring us to our trivia question today. Today, the 22nd day of September 2024, is the birthday of the last person to get a postseason MVP while playing on the losing team. Whether it's a league championship series or World Series, he was the last person to receive a postseason MVP while playing on the losing squad. Put your answer right down here on YouTube, Twitter, wherever you are. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about how the Red Sox could turn this American League wildcard chase into complete anarchy, and wondering about the Astros, the Guardians, and the Yankees, and which one will be standing at the end of the World Series. This has been Locked On MLB. Let's have a great Sunday, folks. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.